On a distant planet, far away from Earth, a group of aliens was feeling very bored. They lived in a colorful world filled with strange plants and funny creatures. But after a long week of doing nothing, they wanted some excitement. The leader of the group, a tall alien with green skin and big round eyes, had an idea. "Let's have some fun!" he shouted. "Let's go to Earth and bring back a human." The other aliens looked at each other with wide eyes. They thought this was a fantastic idea. After all, they had heard many stories about humans. They were curious to see what one looked like and how they acted. The aliens quickly gathered their spaceship, a shiny silver craft with lights that blinked in every color. Once inside, they turned on their special machine that could scan different planets. The machine whirred and beeped as it searched for a suitable human to abduct. After a few moments, the machine beeped loudly and a picture of a young man appeared on the screen. His name was Jake, and he was camping in the woods, enjoying a peaceful night under the stars. "There he is!" The leader pointed at the screen. "He looks perfect." The aliens agreed, and with a push of a button, their spaceship zoomed through space, heading straight for Earth. As they traveled, they laughed and made silly jokes about what they would do with Jake. They imagined dressing him up in funny clothes and showing him off to their friends. The thought of it made them giggle with excitement. Finally, they arrived on Earth, hovering quietly above the tall trees of the forest. The night was dark, and the stars twinkled brightly in the sky. The aliens could see Jake sitting by his campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories to himself. He had no idea that trouble was about to come his way. With a flick of a switch, the aliens activated their teleportation beam. A bright light surrounded Jake, and before he could even scream, he was lifted off the ground and pulled into the spaceship. One moment he was enjoying his campfire, and the next he found himself in a strange, bright room filled with strange creatures. Jake blinked in confusion. He looked around, seeing aliens with different colors and shapes. Some were short and fluffy, while others were tall and skinny. Their big eyes stared at him with excitement and curiosity. "Welcome to our spaceship!" shouted the green alien, who seemed to be the leader. "We have brought you here for fun." Jake's heart raced as he realized he had been kidnapped. He looked around for a way to escape, but saw no doors. Panic rose in his chest, but he knew he had to stay calm. Instead of showing fear, he decided to play along. "What do you want from me?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The aliens chattered excitedly among themselves. They explained that they wanted him to be their pet and that they would take him on adventures across the galaxy. They talked about all the fun they would have, and Jake listened carefully. He understood they were only looking for entertainment, but he knew he had to find a way out. As the aliens laughed and joked, Jake began to think. Perhaps he could use their fun-loving nature against them. While they continued to chat, Jake started to observe his surroundings. The spaceship was filled with strange gadgets and bright lights. Maybe if he played their games well, he could gain their trust and find a way to escape later. "Okay, let's have some fun," Jake said, trying to sound excited. The aliens cheered, thinking they had chosen the perfect human for their adventures. Little did they know, Jake was not the weak and helpless human they expected. He was smart and resourceful. As the aliens prepared for their games, Jake silently planned his next move. The aliens had no idea that their fun was about to turn into a huge mistake. They were in for a big surprise, and Jake was ready to show them just how strong and clever a human could be. Jake looked around the spaceship, still trying to understand what was happening. The inside was bright and colorful, filled with strange gadgets and blinking lights. The aliens buzzed with excitement, chattering among themselves in a mix of high-pitched sounds and deep rumbles. They seemed like a group of kids in a candy store, ready for adventure. "Let's introduce ourselves," said the green alien, who called himself Zog. He pointed to each of his friends, and they took turns saying their names. There was Blip, a short, round alien with blue skin, Glorp, a tall and thin one with long arms, and Winky, who had big, sparkling eyes and loved to giggle. "We are tourists from planet Funzo," Zog exclaimed proudly. "We travel the galaxy looking for exciting creatures to meet. And now you are our special guest, Jake." Jake felt a mix of fear and curiosity. These aliens were strange but seemed friendly. "Nice to meet you all," he replied, trying to sound cheerful. "So, what do you want to do with me?" The aliens exchanged glances, their eyes shining with mischief. "We have lots of fun planned," Blip said, bouncing up and down. "First, we will play some games. You'll be our pet, and we will see how you react." Jake swallowed hard. He didn't like the sound of that, but he played along. Sure, what games do you have? The aliens cheered and began setting up their first challenge. They brought out a colorful ball that glowed and floated in the air. This is the glowing sphere, Zog announced. You have to catch it! It will float around, and if you can grab it, you win. Jake nodded, his heart racing. The aliens started the game, and the sphere zoomed around the room. At first it was all fun and laughter, but soon Jake realized the ball was moving too fast. It zipped past him, teasing him, while the aliens laughed and clapped. Come on, Jake. You can do it! Winky cheered, her voice echoing in the spaceship. But Jake was determined. He took a deep breath and focused. With a sudden burst of energy, he jumped and lunged for the sphere. He managed to grab it. The aliens went wild with excitement, cheering and clapping their hands. Wow! You caught it! Glorp exclaimed, his eyes wide with surprise. You're not like other humans we've seen. Jake felt a small spark of pride. Maybe humans can surprise you, he said, grinning. Encouraged by his success, the aliens quickly set up another game. This time it was a race. They placed Jake in a small, bright-colored vehicle that looked like a flying scooter. You will race against our best flyer, Zog said, pointing to Winky. The aliens cheered as Jake climbed onto the scooter. He felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Winky zoomed past him, her laughter echoing through the ship. As they raced, Jake remembered how he loved riding his bike back on Earth. With a burst of speed, Jake caught up to Winky. The aliens cheered louder, amazed at how fast he was. Just as he was about to pass her, Winky zoomed ahead, but Jake wasn't going to give up easily. He pushed the scooter to its limits, and with a final sprint, he crossed the finish line just ahead of Winky. The aliens erupted in cheers. You are amazing, Jake! You beat Winky! They shouted, their voices filled with joy. Jake couldn't help but laugh along with them. As they celebrated, Jake started to feel more comfortable with the aliens. They were silly and fun, and he could see they were not evil creatures. They just wanted to have a good time. But in the back of his mind, he knew he had to be careful. This was all a game to them, but for him, it was a way to find a chance to escape. Jake realized that as long as he kept winning and made them happy, he could buy himself some time. The aliens planned more games, but Jake was now ready. With every challenge, he learned more about their spaceship and how things worked. Little did they know, the fun was just beginning. The days went by in the spaceship, and Jake continued to play games with the aliens. At first, he felt nervous, but as he got to know them better, he realized they were just curious tourists. Zog, Blip, Glorp, and Winky were eager to learn more about him and his world. They laughed and cheered for him, making Jake feel like a star. One sunny morning, the aliens gathered around Jake with excited expressions. Zog clapped his hands and said, "We have a new game today. It's called the Galactic Challenge. You will show us how strong and smart humans are." Jake felt a mixture of excitement and dread. He loved games, but he didn't want to end up in trouble. "What do I have to do?" he asked, trying to sound brave. "First, we will test your strength," Glorp announced, his long arms waving dramatically. He brought out a heavy-looking object. It was a large metal ball, almost twice the size of Jake. The aliens watched him closely, their eyes sparkling with curiosity. Jake stared at the ball, feeling a bit worried. He remembered his training at home, where he lifted weights to stay fit. "I can do this," he thought to himself. He took a deep breath and walked up to the ball. With determination, Jake squatted down and gripped the heavy ball. He felt the weight press against him, but he pushed with all his might. Slowly, he lifted the ball off the ground. The aliens gasped in surprise, their eyes widening. "You're so strong!" Winky squealed, clapping her hands. Jake smiled, feeling a rush of pride. "It's just a little exercise," he replied, trying to downplay his achievement. The aliens cheered and clapped, impressed by Jake's strength. They quickly set up the next challenge, which involved a series of puzzles and traps. The aliens thought humans were not very smart, but they were about to find out how wrong they were. The first puzzle was a maze made of colorful blocks. "You must find the way out in 2 minutes," Zog declared. The aliens laughed, thinking Jake would get lost. Jake studied the maze carefully. He noticed patterns and quickly mapped out a plan in his mind. As soon as the timer started, he moved swiftly, dodging obstacles and solving problems. The aliens were shocked as he navigated the maze with ease. "Look at him go!" Blip shouted, eyes wide with amazement. "He's so fast!" In just under a minute, Jake reached the exit, raising his arms in victory. The aliens erupted into cheers, their laughter filling the spaceship. Jake felt like a hero, but he knew he had to keep his cool. "I guess humans can solve problems too," he said, smiling at the aliens. They were starting to see him in a new light, no longer just a pet, but a worthy competitor. Next, they moved on to the final challenge of the Galactic Challenge, a test of speed. The aliens brought out a series of obstacles, including lasers and moving platforms. Jake felt nervous, but he remembered all the times he had raced back on Earth. "Are you ready, Jake?" Winky asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Let's do it," he replied confidently. The timer began, and Jake dashed forward, avoiding lasers and jumping over platforms. The aliens watched in awe as he soared through the course, using his agility and quick reflexes. They had never seen a human move like this before. When he crossed the finish line, the aliens erupted into wild cheers. "You are amazing, Jake! You've beaten all our challenges," Zog exclaimed, clapping his hands in excitement. Jake grinned, feeling a surge of confidence. He had not only shown his strength, but also his cleverness and speed. The aliens now saw him as a real champion, and they loved every moment of it. As they celebrated, Jake thought about how much he had learned about the aliens. They were not just silly creatures, they were playful and curious, eager to explore new worlds. But in the back of his mind, he knew he had to remain cautious. With every challenge, he was gathering more information about the spaceship and the aliens' weaknesses. Little did they know, Jake was planning his next move. The unexpected strength he had shown was just the beginning. The aliens were in for a surprise, and Jake was ready to turn the tables. Jake felt like a star aboard the spaceship. The aliens celebrated his victories with games and laughter. Each day, they treated him like a hero, and he enjoyed the attention. But deep down, he knew he needed to find a way back home. One evening, while the aliens were busy preparing for their next game, Jake decided to explore the spaceship a bit more. He moved quietly through the colorful hallways, marveling at the strange decorations and odd gadgets. It felt like a huge playground, but he had to stay focused on his goal, escape. As he wandered, he stumbled upon a small room filled with screens and controls. This must be the control center, he thought, his heart racing with excitement. Jake approached the largest screen and saw images of planets and stars flashing before him. He recognized Earth among them, and his eyes lit up. "If I can figure out how to use this, I might be able to get back home." Just then he heard footsteps approaching. Panic washed over him, and he quickly ducked behind a console. Zog entered the room, humming happily. "Time to check our course," he said, tapping on the controls. Jake held his breath, trying to stay hidden. Zog began pushing buttons, and the screen shifted to show their current location. Jake peeked out from behind the console and listened closely. The green aliens started to talk about their next destination. "We're heading to the planet Gelato! The humans there are so funny," Zog chuckled, unaware of Jake's presence. Jake felt a surge of hope. If they were going to Gelato, that might give him the chance he needed. He realized he had to learn more about the controls and the spaceship while the aliens were distracted. As Zog focused on the screen, Jake quietly studied the buttons and levers. He noticed a large red button labeled Emergency Return. His heart raced. What if I press this, he thought. It could take him back to Earth, but it could also alert the aliens. He needed to be careful. Just then, Winky and Glorp entered the room, giggling and talking excitedly about the next game. Jake's heart sank. He had to act quickly. Zog turned to his friends, and Jake took a deep breath. With a flick of his wrist, he pressed the red button before anyone could notice him. The spaceship shook slightly, and lights began flashing all around. Zog's eyes widened in shock. "What's happening?" he shouted, rushing to the control panel. Jake's heart raced as he tried to blend in. Just a little malfunction?" he said nervously, forcing a smile. No, this is serious!" Zog exclaimed, frantically pushing buttons. The lights blinked faster, and the spaceship began to hum loudly. Winky's laughter turned to panic. "What do we do?" Jake watched the aliens scramble around, realizing that their fun was about to turn into chaos. This might be my chance, he thought. While they were distracted, he could make a run for it. "Follow me," Zog shouted, leading Winky and Glorp back toward the main area. Jake seized the opportunity and slipped out of the control room, his heart pounding. As he raced down the hallways, he heard the aliens shouting behind him. "Wait, Jake! Come back!" Blip cried. But Jake was determined. He had to find a way to reach the exit before they caught up. Finally, he reached the main door of the spaceship, which was slightly open. With one last glance back, he saw the aliens running toward him, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. This is it, he thought. With a burst of energy, Jake pushed the door open and dashed outside. The bright light of the alien planet flooded his eyes. He was on Halato, but he couldn't stop to admire the scenery. He needed to find shelter and figure out his next move. Jake sprinted into the thick, colorful forest that surrounded the landing area. The trees were tall and strange, with vibrant colors that looked like a painting. He could hear the aliens calling his name in the distance, but he was determined to stay hidden. As he ran, he thought about how far he had come. From being a captured human to standing on an alien planet, he felt a sense of empowerment. He was not just a pet, he was a survivor. Jake knew this was the turning point. If he played his cards right, he might just find a way to turn the tables on the aliens and make it back home. Jake ran through the colorful forest of gelato, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. He could hear the voices of the aliens fading behind him. He felt free, but he knew he couldn't stop. The trees were thick and strange, and he needed to find a safe place to think. After a while, Jake slowed down and leaned against a tree. He took deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. What now? He thought, glancing around. The forest was beautiful, but it was also unfamiliar. He needed to find a way to get back to Earth. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound nearby. Jake's heart raced again. He quickly crouched behind a bush, watching as a group of small creatures emerged. They looked like fluffy balls with tiny legs and bright eyes. They scurried around, chirping happily. Jake couldn't help but smile. They're cute, he thought. But then he remembered the aliens and their strange games. They had treated him like a pet, and he had to remind himself that he was not just a plaything. I need to be smart about this, he thought. As Jake moved away from the cute creatures, he decided to find a higher spot to look for the spaceship. He climbed a small hill, carefully making his way through the branches. When he reached the top, he could see the alien ship in the distance, still parked in the clearing. I need to get back on that ship, he realized. From this spot, he also noticed a group of aliens gathering near the ship. Zog, Winky, Glorp, and Blip were all looking worried, their faces filled with concern. Jake felt a wave of guilt wash over him. They had treated him well, even if it was all a game. Maybe they were not as bad as he thought. Suddenly, he heard Zog shouting, "Where did Jake go? We can't leave without him!" The other aliens nodded, their expressions anxious. Jake felt a strange pull in his heart. He didn't want to hurt them, but he needed to return home. As he watched them, he remembered the fun times they had shared. The laughter, the games, the way they had cheered for him. Maybe they were just curious tourists, and he had been their first human friend. With a new determination, Jake decided he would go back. Maybe I can help them understand humans better, he thought. He turned around and made his way down the hill, moving cautiously to avoid being spotted. When he reached the clearing, the aliens noticed him immediately. "Jake!" Winky shouted, her face lighting up with joy. The other aliens rushed toward him, relief washing over them. "We were so worried!" "Why did you run away?" Zog asked, looking concerned. Jake took a deep breath. "I didn't want to be just a pet. I wanted to go home," he replied, his voice steady. "But I realized you care about me. You wanted to have fun, and I appreciate that. I just need to find a way back to Earth." The aliens exchanged glances, and Jake could see a flicker of understanding in their eyes. "We didn't mean to make you feel trapped," Glorp said, his voice soft. "We just wanted to learn about you." Jake smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "I know, but I miss my home and my family." Zog nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe we can help you return. We didn't understand how important Earth is to you. We just wanted to explore." "Really?" Jake asked, surprised. "Of course! Let's fix the ship and take you back home," Winky exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. The group hurried back to the spaceship, and Jake felt a sense of hope. Together, they worked on the controls, and Jake realized that his time on the ship had taught him many things about these aliens. They were not so different from humans. They simply had their own way of seeing the world. Finally, after some adjustments, the spaceship was ready. "You can go home now, Jake," Zog said, a proud smile on his face. Jake climbed into the spaceship's cockpit, feeling a mix of sadness and joy. "Thank you for everything," he said, turning to the aliens. "I will always remember you." As the spaceship lifted off the ground, he looked out at Gelato, the vibrant planet fading below him. The aliens waved, their expressions filled with hope and friendship. With a push of a button, the spaceship activated its hyperdrive, and in an instant, Jake was hurtling through space. He felt exhilarated, ready to return to Earth with a story of adventure and newfound friends. Jake had not only escaped, but also gained a unique perspective on friendship and understanding. He realized that sometimes the most unexpected experiences can lead to the greatest discoveries. As he looked ahead, he couldn't wait to share his incredible journey with everyone back home.